Wow, I have had a day just full of praise and thanksgiving, and if my voice is a little raspy or deep, it's because I'm trying to reserve my voice for tomorrow when we have service. But I am so glad that He brought me out of darkness into the marvelous light, placed my feet on good ground, and gave me the strength to fight because He's done great things. So I say yes to Him. I was reading 2 Kings 23, and it was talking about King Joachim is what it looks like, but it's probably Joachim. Was one of the great kings of Israel. And he was even said in the word that he was seeking after God with his whole heart, his whole mind, his whole soul, right? He did so much to undo the evil of previous kings of Israel, of his fathers and his fathers and his father's fathers, his grandfathers, all the idolatry that the Lord was unpleased with. This king Joachim, I'm gonna call him Joachim because I don't know how we're really supposed to be saying that, but the king Joachim, he undid all of the idolatry that was causing God to turn away from his children, because they were, even the priests had idols of other gods in the sanctuaries and in the temples during this time. So Joachim he took all them down. He was destroying all of the false idol temples, all of the false idols. Joachim was getting rid of all the altars for the false idols. And the book of Kings was talking about how, it's chronicled. There's multiple places where you will see what this king Joachim did for the Lord, because he loved the Lord so much. He was living his walk, right? But after he died, he had two sons that went right back around and did evil in the sight of the Lord. Both of his immediate sons, both of them went on to be king as well, and did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went after those false idols again. Israel's problem has always been that she goes after false idols, that she loves the world. She loves the things of the world. She loves to, and by she, I mean Israel, the bride of Christ, God's people, have always had a problem with wanting to be connected to false gods, to idols. And as I was reading that, it put in my mind that we can be great, in our own right. We as human beings, and especially as parents, we can have a wonderful, fabulous ministry. We can be the leader of a fabulous ministry. Everybody knows the old saying that it's the preacher's kid that are always the worst, right? The preacher can be a mighty man of God, casting out demons in Jesus' name, and the praise and the worship is reaching heaven, and changes are being made, and people are being brought to Christ through the ministry. But we have to remember that our first ministry, especially as parents, our first ministry is your household. And a lot of ministers, and I have been guilty of this too, a lot of ministers will make the excuses that, I'm doing XYZ for my ministry, that's why I have to be away from my family and all that stuff. And that is a easy way to lose your family, your children, to the enemy, if they are not being trained up in the way that they should go, because you out doing XYZ in XYZ place. They over here with the world's kids at basketball practice and soccer practice and volleyball and cheerleading. They're in the schools, okay, that do not have Christ's interests at all. They're in schools doing these extracurricular activities afterwards while you're out saving souls. when they should be with their parents. Like, I always struggle with this, especially as a young person, because people don't want to hear it, but your kids need your instruction. As much as we want to shirk that responsibility off to the schools, to training programs, to extracurricular activities, your children need you. They need to see how you live, because how you live at home is how they're going to see how a Christian lives. Doesn't matter what you do in church, doesn't matter the number of souls that you save, because this king did what was right in the sight of the Lord. He was tearing down all the idols. He was going in and undoing the works of the enemy, and God was pleased with him in that, right? But how do you do all that and your sons do the opposite? There has to be a disconnect there. And that's what we're seeing a lot in the church today. There's a lot of ministers who are really only Christian at church, and these people. You've seen these people outside of church, and they wear grills, and they speak like a sailor, and all manner of things that is not supposed to be, right? And this is not in judgment of them, but this is we have to have a standard 100% of the time, that if for God I live, for God I die, if that's how I'm going to say that I am, I'm going to need to be that way in church, out of church, in season, out of season, on the job, around my friends. And really, you should not be walking in the counsel of the ungodly. So you really shouldn't even have friends who are encouraging ungodly behavior. But that's a whole different conversation for a different day. But we have to get back, as parents, we have to get back our children. We have to return to the first ministry, because saving souls out in the world is great, but what is heaven gonna, the word of Jesus himself said, who is my mother or my brother but those who do the will of my Father? So if you are not teaching your children to have an innate love and adoration for Christ, you're failing, period. It doesn't matter what you do out. The children that you have are your first responsibility. Other than your relationship to God, the children that you have are your first responsibility. We cannot continue to allow this to be a problem. Having family relationships is more important than the money that you will get from anybody's tithe. Your child's influence can change the world, and your influence on your child is the important thing that you have control over. So that's really all that I had to say. We need to get back to the home ministry. Women being at home is so important. Training of the children when they're young is so important. I was in my son's school the other day. It was his birthday celebration, and they were asking him about things that he loves. And one of the things that he said he loves is Jesus. And the school that he goes to is not a Christian school, which is going to change next year, but it's a Montessori school. So a lot of the students there are not Christian. Their parents aren't Christian. The teachers aren't Christian, But he was so proud just because of what he sees at home. I am in season, out of season, 100% of the time going to represent Christ. And I have no qualms about that. And anybody has a problem with that, they can really, that's their business and not mine, But it was just such a sense of pride that I'm doing the right thing. Even if he's not going to a school that I would really prefer for him to be going to, what he's getting at home is substantial enough that when he talks about the things that he loves, the things that he's most proud of, Jesus was first, Christ was first. Not to say that I'm better than anyone or anything, because I only have one child and I didn't do, the parent process, right? I'm unmarried, divorced actually, and it's a whole mess. But since I would say the last the last year or so, really, honestly, I've really been trying to align myself and my life with what the word says, with what God says he wants us to live. And the fruit is showing in my child. So I used to go to these meetings when I was younger, and they would always say, how do you judge a tree? Like, how do you judge a man? By the fruit it bears. So if the fruit that you're bearing is ungodly, then